need you, my heart's on fire. You come to me wild and wild. You come to me, give me everything I need. Give me a lifetime of promises and a world of dreams. Speak the language of love like you know. Okay, I did not cue that. It should have like crescendoed at the right time. Sorry for our Tina Turner fans, but I am so glad to be here tonight with our amazing panel of all women. We did it, guys. We're here, like we're available. But I have been so excited about this all week, and thank you all for joining our admissions table. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. I think Alicia is going to be joining us at one point, but if everybody, I'm going to actually start with Stephanie and then just everybody jump in. But my name is Jenn. I run Jenn the Tutor. I thought my name Jenn the Tutor was going to last forever, but now I feel like I don't want to tutor anymore. I want this all to be over in terms of testing. But Stephanie, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Stephanie Sylla, and I'm a senior at CD Hylton in Woodbridge, Virginia, and I am also part of the UVA class of 2025.
Recent addition to the class. Noor, you want to go next, and then everybody can just kind of jump in?
Sure. So I'm Noor Haddad. I am a college counselor at Collegewise, typically based out of Orange County, California, but I have been remote for the last year, so I'm trying to re-enter society.
Okay. I love that. Who wants to go next? Marie?
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Marie Bigham. I'm coming to you from New Orleans. I'm the founder and executive director of ACCEPT, which stands for Admissions Community Cultivating Equity and Peace Today.
And Tara.
Hello, everyone. Tara Miller, and I'm in Austin, Texas. I am right now currently doing special projects and seasonal reading with St. Mary's University remotely in San Antonio, Texas. But I've been a college and career counselor at a public high school in Austin for the past 16 years.
And you also picked the song for tonight. That's important to know.
She just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean,
with Jay-Z, which Jay-Z is deserving, but I'm like, I mean, what happened here? Because anyway, we won't get into that right now. But so I just wanted to kind of talk about this year, because everybody's like, this year was ridiculous. This year upended everything. Let's just kind of go around. I'll start with Tara, since you're the last person. What was your feelings about this year? What changed? What stayed the same? And how did it impact your practice or how you practice?
Oh, that's a big one. I mean, this is the strangest year for everyone. But I will say, for me personally, coming from working remotely with students, so starting the year, writing letters of recommendation, helping them, and then I personally had a transition in the spring semester where I left my job for family reasons, and so towards the end of the year, I was reading recommendations and making admissions decisions with the admissions team at St. Mary's, and so my year was completely, I saw ends of the spectrum in this crazy year, all from the comfort of my couch back there. So it's been eye-opening seeing both sides of the desk, so to speak. It's been crazy. It's been good. It's been bad. I mean, it's just all the things that I've seen. But for students, I think they're going through a lot of those same emotions that we are as professionals and adults, with that expectation and that weight that's so heavy for many of them with the pandemic, with college, and then just trying to figure it all out. So I feel like we're all kind of breathing a little bit of relief right now. I mean, the CDC just said we can, I'm fully vaxxed tomorrow. My son's getting his first shot tomorrow.
Yay.
Like this normalcy has started we're feeling it, we're going to get back out in the world, and our students are feeling that. And it's yeah, so I think we've kind of hit a roller coaster ride.
Right. Marie, are you breathing a sigh of relief at the end of this, or?
No, but I'm not a girl who ever breathes a sigh of relief for anything. Like, I'm always just a little too anxious about waiting for something.
What shoe are you waiting to have dropped?
I don't know. I'm not sure. You know what? I will be honest with you. I think getting the news about University of Georgia and the whole public system immediately returning to testing, that was really disheartening today.
Yeah.
It was really disheartening. And yet, like a couple of hours later, I was on a phone call with a coalition of people from a broad range of places working on a statewide initiative in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much more forward thinking. I'm like, okay, so some stuff is still happening, right?
Yeah.
So that was cool, but I guess that was the other shoe that was going to drop. I think I wanted so badly during this time for us to be able to take advantage of this crazy and really overthrow things. And I think that the profession, the ecosystem, the business of college admissions demonstrated it was possible. They were capable of pivoting, of stopping on a dime and really like making some changes that no one thought was possible. They showed that they were capable of doing that. And I'm going to be super snarky now. Thank you. When it benefited the institutions, but when it came to things that benefited students or families, they were like right there. And I think I was on one hand really heartened in this challenging time about some of the ways that our colleagues in the profession and the process did rise to the occasion, and deeply disappointed in the ways it didn't.
Yeah. I feel like the Georgia thing was a kick in the gut, and I was like, like angry and tweeting, and I was like, it's okay, I don't care. But it did. It felt like a kick in the gut for you all to return to testing. And I mean, I loved everything you said. So, Noor, are you waiting for the shoe to drop? Are you breathing? Are we doing both? What are we doing here?
I feel like I'm in between Tara and Marie. I'm always at a state of just, preparing for something. I mean, I think after May 1st, a lot of people are feeling a little bit of relief, but also we're having a lot of unusual waitlist movement, those things that we have to keep aware of. And one thing I've been thinking about is just how much school counselors have had to manage, how much they've been trying to keep families assured and students assured. And they're usually the people that, the students and parents will go to. They're going to come to people to ask them questions. And this year we just haven't been able to predict everything. And usually we're there to, reassure. And this year we didn't have the crystal ball like we usually can rely on. We don't have a lot of those predictable things that we can typically understand. So that has weighed so much on people, and especially on school counselors, right? How much they've had to manage and reassure and know in a year of unknowing, in a year of a time where people just are trying to survive and get through and manage the best they can. So I think that there's going to be a lot of recovery from this. But I mean, school counselors have just been balancing so much right now. And my mind has been on them right now. So
yeah.
And
I'm like, hey, Alicia. Hey, friend. So Alicia, it's like you came perfect time, right? Like we're talking about counselors.
Sorry, I'm late.
No. You are right on time. Right on time, because we're talking about school counselors. And I love what you just said, Noor, about the year of unpredictability and being the force of stability that you're supposed to be. What was that like to manage that and students and not necessarily, did you feel like you had all the answers, or did you feel like everything, how did you feel?
So, I mean, I think that parents will come to you asking for a lot of sometimes guarantees. They'll ask these questions that usually you'll be able to answer in a normal year. And this year, you just have a lot of, we have to see what's going to happen. We have to wait on the results from this. We have to wait on admissions decisions. And so we can make as many, predicted measures as we can and give as many answers, but we had to be on top of everything.
Mhm.
And when I'm thinking about counselors that are in the school, because I am not a school-based counselor, and I'm thinking about how much they all had to juggle and how much they had to manage. And so to be in that space where the students are struggling and the students are coming to you and asking you a bunch of questions, and they're asking you to be that force of stability while you're also trying to be a force of stability yourself, and feel like you have to keep up with those articles that are coming out and the ones that are dropping and the one that just came out here that a parent's going to send you. So for me, I mean, I think it's just been a lot of trying to balance what the families are expecting and what the students are expecting.
Alicia, how are you balancing what the students are expecting, the families are expecting? And Stephanie, I'll come to you about what you were expecting. So Alicia, how are you managing all of that?
I'm not really, honestly. I'm not managing it. I'm like still information gathering. Like I feel like every webinar that I get an email to, like I'm signing up in 0.3 seconds because I'm like, they're going to tell me about this year and, the decisions that they made and their reflections on those decisions and whether or not that's going to impact my 11th graders. And so I'm still very much gathering information, and it's really difficult for teenagers to hear, I don't know, and you have to wait, and you have to wait some more, and you have to wait just a little bit longer. It's really hard for them to hear that when, the school year is almost over. So it's been tough. And I think transparency with my families, and they've been super appreciative because they also don't know and aren't even sure the questions to ask anymore. So I think, certainly being open and honest and communicating regularly with them has been helpful. But honestly, Jen, like I'm still collecting information.
And Stephanie, you're one of my biggest, Stephanie knows almost as much about admissions as I do, but also knows a lot about the misinformation on Reddit, the misinformation on YouTube. But you also, despite all of this information, you did not know a lot about test optional. Did you know at all about test optional?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't think it applied to me.
Okay. Because
I was just like, oh, they can do that, but I can't. Like I need to have this in order to guarantee something or check off a list, I guess.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with this new set of information, how are you coping and how are you dealing? And how did you deal with the shifts that happened through the admission season?
I kind of didn't, in a way. I just kind of had to. I mean, you don't really have a choice, right? You have to do it. So it was definitely hard because I felt like when going into maybe spring of my junior year, I felt like I was really, really prepared. I felt like I had a good, solid plan. I knew exactly what I was going to do and when, and then it just kind of all disappeared. So then I felt really out of control, which is something that I hate feeling like. So it was definitely frustrating. It was frustrating because I didn't know the answer. And then for a lot of my friends, they looked to me for the answer, and then I had to go find someone else. And then my school counselor, she wasn't really available because she was trying to figure out if we were going virtual, what was going on. So I didn't have that resource. And then online, there was just so much information that is just overwhelming. It's ridiculously overwhelming. So and then you'll find information, as soon as you find a source that you think you trust, there's another source contradicting that one. So then you're like, okay, so now what do I do? How can I really do this? So eventually, before I met Jenn, it came to a point where I had to kind of trust my gut and kind of trust.
But you went back to your gut when you were making that decision.
Always. Yeah. I always, I trust it more than I trust anything else. So I always go with that at the end, but I definitely had to rely on it much more because everything else kind of fell through and it was all kind of in the balance in the work. So
yeah. And Marie, you actually, I'm like, what year was that? You actually did hack the gates, and then you put out these policy papers. So you were creating information, and not creating information in a way that's like, here's some stuff that we've already been talking about, and like, let's just whatever. They were, when I was reading through your policy papers, it's like, so things that we're not talking about. Why did you feel like it was important this year last year, whatever year it was, to put that information out? And your group is also a group that provides information. How did you nurture and cultivate this year?
It's just a constant changing battle. And just like Stephanie said, it's keeping up with this flow of information and trusting sources. And understanding that some sources were, I don't know, some stories were just shifting so fast that sources could be both correct and incorrect all at the same time. Institutions were correct and incorrect all at the same time. Regarding Hack the Gates, like, I have to admit, I'm incredibly flattered that it all came together, but it had nothing to do with me, Marie Bigham. That was Oyan Poon. That was Dr. Poon as the PI for the whole project. And more than that, it was this team of 10 researchers.
Yeah.
We gathered this group of all women here in a really interesting, diverse group of women. I want to point out, too, for Hack the Gates, we had 10 different researchers, and we were extremely intentional. We wanted to highlight work by scholars who were early career, people of color, not at fancy institutions, and we wanted them to have the freedom to say whatever they wanted. And so we had 10 researchers, 8 people of color, only 2 at R1 research institutions, only one with tenure. Like, we accomplished all of those goals that we set out to do. Yeah. And I got to be frank with you, it took almost no effort.
Yeah, that's what I find. It's like when you involve, like Alicia's like, yes, you can unmute, but yeah, it's like when you, it's not hard to find new voices, and it's not hard to cultivate those voices. It's just giving them space and not giving them restrictions. And I felt like, for the first time when I was reading your papers, I felt like this person actually, one, gets what I'm talking about. I'm not alone. And I think that was really important. But then 2, is honest. Like, I felt the honesty in those papers. Alicia, you were also, I'm going to go to you. What do you feel like? I mean, we said all summer, Black Lives Matter. Like, they matter, right? And we need to bring more people to the table. How do you feel like our industry, I don't even know what our industry is, but our industry is doing with that? And what do you feel like we need to evolve to?
Yeah, I mean, to Marie's point, like, the fact that getting this group of people or that group of people together, like, didn't take, this extensive search process, like, we're out here, we're here, we're doing the work. We've been doing the work for forever. I think I don't know. I am concerned that secondary institutions, higher education institutions are going to miss this moment. Miss the advice, this free advice that we're giving, these gems that we drop on a regular basis. Like, I'm nervous that these institutions and these leaders, who are by far still largely white, cis, hetero men, that they're going to miss the lesson that these voices, our voices, are being excluded. And we're here, and we've got really important things to say, and we've got really important experiences to share, from students to early practitioners to seasoned practitioners. Don't miss this moment. But I don't know. I mean, I on a sunny day in DC, I'm optimistic. On a rainy day, I'm cynical. So,
and on a gas shortage day, how are you feeling?
A little cynical as well.
Yeah, and then Tara, you actually wrote this year about the lack of women voices in the NPR article. And I think one of the things, it's like, yes, this is also a great article And why can't you just include women?
I mean, I just call it when I see it. We all have to get comfortable doing that too, is, naming it when it's there. And people will listen. You just have to be willing to share your perspective. And I think they're starting to hear it. They're hearing us. They're seeing us. I mean, we're all here together today. And I have that privilege, and I have that ability to do so. So I'm going to speak up for it. I'm going to speak up for my students. I've worked in public school for 16 years, and I feel like, they need a voice, and I'm giving them that voice. And so trying to shed a light on, their story and their experience. And I appreciate you guys talking about Noor and Stephanie, counselors. Public school counselors are stretched so thin. I mean, this year, my school alone lost 3 counselors, and this is not unusual for the district, and teachers too. So when we are talking about college process and things changing this year, and how hard it was for students to get that letter of rec or that information correct from a counselor, next year it's going to be very similar. New people are going to be in, new teachers. And so if we are constantly going back to the same way of doing business, these new people coming in aren't going to have the experience. They're not going to know the students. The students aren't going to have that relationship with counselors or teachers. So it just, I really think we will miss an opportunity if we don't change. I mean, we all cleaned out our closets and our kitchens over this pandemic. Colleges went,
I definitely forgot to clean the closet.
Well, I mean, but why would you put that junk back? Like we did this. Let's figure this out. This is so much better, and we can go forward instead of backwards.
Marie, I'm gonna go to you because I know you have to jump off soon.
Oh no, you got me. Yeah.
Okay. Let me go to Noor, and then I'm gonna come back to you, and then Stephanie, I'm back to you. Noor, what do you wish had been cleaned out of the closet of admissions that hasn't been cleaned yet? And then also, that's 1. 2, why do you think we keep seeing the narrative test optional? And I remember your tweets about this. Test optional the tests are broken, but what about all of these other things that are broken? We should keep the tests, because if we don't keep the tests, these other broken things will emerge. What are your thoughts?
So, oh my gosh, the things that need to be cleaned out of the closet. Oh my God. That can be a whole conversation in itself. I mean, I think to Tara's point, I'm thinking about all the things that the pandemic has brought to light, right? I feel like they entered survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you notice all these other things that are going on around you that just need to be fixed. You realize what's essential to you and what you need, and really truly what your needs are. And, from that perspective of, a counselor in a school, I'm sure that those have been so prominent. When I'm thinking about the things that my students are having to jump through, things as simple as, why does every student have to pay $13 to $15 to send a test score? Isn't there a simpler way for this to be done? It can be that small. It can be that small of an issue that students are just having to deal with. So when I'm thinking about all the stress they had during this past fall and all the things that they had to do, there were so many little things that I just thought, why do these students have to go through this? Mm-hmm. What are all these extra fees that they're paying in addition to $80, $90 application fees? How can we make this process simpler for them to get a fee waiver? Why do they have to go talk to 5 people in order to do that? There are just so many little things that are barriers in addition to the standardized test. So if we're seeing Georgia return back to that, well, I mean, I don't know how much we can clean up there because they're returning that big barrier. But I think if we remove that first barrier, then the floodgates will open, and there are going to be so many other little things that we can clean up. Yeah. Sometimes it's those little things that break the person and break the student down and just cause them to just go into either a shutdown mode or drive up their anxiety. So many mental health issues have come to light in the last year for students, even more so than they were already feeling. So hey, if test optional to start, great. I want to be able to continue the conversation beyond that, to figure out what else are the little things that are standing in the way of these kids that should be getting these opportunities and have these little gates. At every turn, there's a gate. So what can we do to, in Marie's words, hack the gates? How can we continue doing that?
Marie.
Yeah, Noor, I have to. I don't know if you saw this. I think it was a story in, I think, Inside Higher Ed, because really everyone has time to read everything we're supposed to keep up with. And you talk about the mental health concerns and the weight this is happening on students that, Stephanie could speak to much better than we could. There was this ridiculous article where I want to say university administrator, but I could be wrong, suggested that the way to improve the mental health crisis in college is by requiring every high school student to take a class on mental health in high school as a requirement to go to college.
Okay.
And there I was, like 7 o'clock in the morning, having a rage stroke. And my husband's like, "Why are you screaming?" I'm like, I can't get into it.
I cannot tell you the amount of articles I scream at on a regular basis. And but what's one little thing, Marie, that you feel like we need to get rid of?
Oh, girl, I don't know. Little thing we should.
Okay, let's take what thing do you want to take at? Well, besides all of admission, right? Because I think when some people say test optional is bad, but then the letter of recommendation is bad, the GPA is bad, and I'm like, I have no problem burning all of it. So if you wanted to start throwing things in the fire, just let me know. But do you have? I don't have like a. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around. And this used to be like a fun question. Like, how do you burn it down to rebuild it? Like, used to be something that I would think about for fun. Yeah. And now, this is going to sound strange and exciting and kind of cool. Now that these opportunities are kind of tangible, right? Like, people are listening when we collectively talk. Like when this group of women gets together and talks about this, like, people are paying attention, right? So now that the opportunity is somewhat tangible, it's kind of scarier to wrap your head around. Right. And truly, I think when I think about the best path, the most equitable path, it's transparent. Mm-hmm. It requires no middle person. It takes out, but that makes me sick to say, right? Like, I spent 23 years in a career of helping students find that path, but that shouldn't be necessary, right? Like, that shouldn't be necessary. And so when I think about what it takes, like, I think about flipping things completely upside down. Like, and I love this was a Hack the Gates paper, for example, like the Idaho Direct Admissions Program, where because all the students in the public school system in the state, all their grades go to one central place, and they used to have a required test for graduation that went to one place. Instead of students applying to college, they received a letter at the beginning of senior year saying, here are all the colleges in the state to which you have been admitted. Here's how much it's going to cost you. And by the way, this ticket's good for 3 years. Love it. Student didn't have to do a single thing. They had all the information, right? That makes me, like, I think those ideas are so amazing. One idea that I've been chewing on, this isn't to change things, but I want us to, like, think about this when we think about admissions and what could be better. I've been playing with this idea of, so guess with me, what consumer good thing we pay for is kind of required to live a productive life in our culture, is extremely expensive, but you don't know the price, and requires a demonstration of character to unknown, undefined ways, right? Like, what consumer good hits those 3 things? And the only thing I can think of besides higher ed are New York City co-op apartments. That are tens of millions of dollars, that kind of gatekeeping. And do we really want higher ed to be the only thing that fits that model? No. And I don't have answers. I don't know what the small thing is. And I also don't know. I just have questions, right? Like, I feel like every time I have questions, Tara, thank you, Maurice. Thank you so much. Tara, and then Stephanie, I want you to get in here.
As she was talking, I was thinking, and currently the Austin housing market as well, there'll be one house and it'll sit for a day and have 100 offers, and the price goes up. And so why are we doing this? Why aren't we exposing more opportunities for people to, you know, have opportunities for higher education, just like the housing market. I think partly is the media. I love journalists. I love reading newspapers. I consume a lot of it. But I do believe that that is a driving force when we talk about rankings, when we talk about, you know, the elite institutions and the hyper focus on just those institutions. That's going to cause this frenzy, this hype beast of higher education. When, you know, you talk about the ease of applying, Marie, and I think about my 25% students, you know, 25% of my graduates would start at a community college. And when I would tell them, your job, it has gotten easier. You will be accepted. There is, you know, you don't have to submit an essay. It doesn't cost to apply. You are accepted. And there's no mad rush and no big deadline right away. You know, it's like, ooh, the weight gets off their shoulders. They just feel like this relief. And it's because we've made the choice simple. We've made it transparent. And I'm not saying that they're not going to have a challenge, you know, while they're there, or, you know, doing the paperwork and things like that, because there's a lot of paperwork when it comes to college admissions. But it's that option, and we've shown it in a positive light. And I think that that's something that we all need to do in this profession, is talk about these options, transfer options. You know, I'm a big advocate of transfer. A third of college graduates have transferred, a third, and we don't talk about that. And so I do think that, you know, whether it's from community college to a four-year university, or a four-year university to another four-year university, to another four-year university, you know, many of us, I was a transfer student, many of us in this profession were as well. So it's something that I think the media doesn't talk about as often either. So I would like to see more media focus on, you know, regional public universities, community colleges, open access institutions. And I think that that positivity around that narrative will help drive change as well.
I love that. Stephanie, little things that could take off the weight, big things that could take off the weight. If you could reform admission after going through it, where would you go first, and what would you nurture or destroy?
That's a really big question.
Thank you.
And it's hard to like answer that, because we identify all these problems and issues, but then we have to think of solutions. And you're like, okay, how do we destroy these things that have been going on for hundreds of years? Like it's very hard to think about. But for me personally, I think everything needs to start younger. You know, we need to start like sending these messages out a lot younger. Because for me, I was a go-getter. Like I went to get information at a much younger age than most people. So for me, I was like, okay, give me. I want to know. But I know a lot of my friends they weren't aware of anything until like end of junior year, where they had to. So I think it definitely needs to start younger. We need to create some type of system where, as we're going into this process, we're not terrified, we're not scared, we're not nervous about it, because we've been in a way preparing for it for the majority of our lives. So I'm talking maybe like 6th grade, you're assigned someone, maybe they're part of the admissions, maybe not, maybe it's kind of like a counselor, and they just kind of follow your journey as you go into finishing up middle school and then into high school. So then they actually know who you are and your journey. And it's not just, you know, words on a paper or classes on a transcript. You get more in depth of who the person is and what schools might be a better match for them. So to me, that would be the most valuable thing to do.
Yeah. And for me, it's like not necessarily shifting away from, I know people are like concerned, and I start to see in the test prep industry and also in the independent counselor industry, I'm seeing people start to panic and be like, no, you have to take the test, you know, or you have to do this, or, you know, it's not the test, or it's this. And like the idea of a magic formula, because of desperation, feeling like your position is being destroyed, right? Like, I mean, again, I just started watching Marvel, so it's like, snap, you're gone, right? So, but to me, I'm like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to make better humans, as opposed to better applicants. And so it's my job to find places to create spaces for better humans and figure out where those better humans would be better matched at. Because I only know what I know. I only know mostly my Virginia schools, a couple flagships, other places, of course, the big ones. The other thing that I would say is I always see, it's like when we talk about the newspapers and the media, the perception of admissions is really shaped around what only happens at Ivy. And even when we're talking about test optionals, like, well, you know, Penn did this and, you know, Georgetown did this. Well, those are not really test optional places that I would consider to be the leaders of test optional. So I think for me, it's about asking questions and saying to people, okay, I've seen your merit aid packages, which for me, I go where the money resides. So I see those merit aid packages. I'm like, oh, you actually value students. And maybe I sent you the wrong set of students last year. Let me make sure I send you the right set of students because this is where the money is. Alicia, I saw you nodding about merit aid and things like that. And in the world of Black Lives Matter, it hasn't always translated to merit aid. So what questions are you asking and what are you moving towards in the future as you kind of figure out where to go from here?
Yeah, merit aid and need-based aid is incredibly important. The wealth gap is always in the back of my mind when I'm advising students, particularly because most of my students are Black and brown. So, and, you know, recognizing that the wealth gap persists, and, you know, 4 years of $40,000-$50,000 is going to make sure that it continues to persist. So, you know, I mean, money is really important, and it's certainly a part of the conversation. It's always something that I'm gauging and keeping track of certain trends with certain schools and certain applicants. I love the idea of a system where, you know, I am not needed and necessary for students to apply, for students to be admitted, but certainly to help, you know, navigate the system with families and students and which option is going to make the most sense for them financially, programmatically, and all of these sorts of things. So yeah, money is a huge factor. And I know, and I've had conversations with students and families who were like, yeah, this place is more expensive, but everybody has heard of it. This place is less expensive, but nobody has heard of, you know, this school. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you know, that's a larger issue to me. So
wait, can I jump in really quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen. Because we're talking about like that, I'm gonna pay more for this because someone's heard of it. Anyone watching this, I want to so strongly encourage you to read Ron Lieber's book, The Price of College. It's on the shelf here. The Price You Pay for College. I knew I was getting that wrong. Ron Lieber's book, The Price You Pay for College, because he breaks down in really, I think, unusual clarity. Right? Like he really pushes families to first acknowledge anything that costs money, anything related to money will have emotion. Yeah. That all the players have emotions, including the institutions, not just the families. The institutions have feelings too, right? And priorities they're demonstrating and things like that. And you as a consumer, as a family, you need to understand what you actually value. No judgment, but what do you value? And if you value that, how do you research that and hold the institution accountable for that? Mm-hmm. If you value brand name more than anything else, how are you going to research the value of what that brand name means for $80,000 a year, right? And he walks you through those steps. So it's cold and it's painful. And I wish everyone
I'm gonna have to get it.
It's really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get it because it's on my list. It's, you know, like everything's like after May 1st. I have like after May 1st, I'm just gonna be a better person. Noor, how are you reconciling with families? you have institutional priorities, you have family priorities, you have student priorities, and sometimes they don't always match. And also, how do you, and this is actually a personal question, how do you deal with when your values don't necessarily align with the families that you're working with? Like, so for me, it's always, I think Stephanie actually made me see a little bit of the light. Like for me, it's always cheap, because that's what I love except for big marinade offers and like expensive ribs. Like I just love cheap, right? How do you deal with all of the little pieces that are kind of floating as you're doing counseling? And how do you put your own ideas aside to best counsel a student?
That's a great question because, my situation was very different from the students that I'm working with in general. And I use that as kind of an educational moment too. I graduated from a Cal State, and my family was looking for the best financial option for me, and that was it. Drivable, something that I could commute to. And so I of course have to assess what the needs are of each family, right? So you want to make sure that you are serving the family well, serving the student well, asking what it is that they're going to need, setting those expectations up early and informing them along the way. But at the same time, I don't necessarily look at it as something that, is going to clash necessarily with the things that I value, but I think of how can my experience and my expertise help the family understand other viewpoints and just understand some of the other pieces that might come into play. So of course they're going to have, the requests that come in at the beginning, and they're going to have needs, and you want to make sure to assess each family individually. Everyone is going to be completely different. And at the center of everyone is a core pain or a core worry. And it's really about addressing that core pain and that core worry. And not necessarily feeling like you're making, not necessarily an assumption, but that you're thinking that a family is going to want the same thing, right? So I think it's really about developing that relationship with them and making sure that they know you're all on the same team, but being in a place where I can educate them if there are things that they might be not sure about, or if they might say the Cal States are inferior to the UCs. Well, I get to use my place as a student who attended a Cal State to educate them on that and explain, well, actually, here was my experience there. And it's been helpful. I mean, in a lot of cases, they're coming out, the other end, knowing a lot more about the process, knowing how to navigate it, but they also feel like their needs are going to be taken care of because you're assessing them individually. And as long as you build that trust, then you can use your space to educate them along the way too. Because, if you're coming from a completely different background and you have things that were completely different to you than the students that I'm serving, then they get to learn from me too, and I get to learn from them. Yeah. So I think it's been a huge learning process for me over the several years I've been doing this.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, Stephanie, because I'm about to ask everybody, like, what do you feel like you learned this season? But Stephanie, you were kind of in between, like, I know exactly, you don't need to say brand names, but you were in between, like, this is my dream school. This is the school that everybody around here knows and I love. This is the school here, but it doesn't give me the college experience. And then this is the middle school, I think, in my head. And the middle school is kind of like where you landed. How did you figure out what your priorities were when deciding? And how did you end up ultimately making your choices?
So for me, I made the opposite choice of what I logically came to a conclusion of. So it was definitely a big risk in my head. Like, thinking about it, I was like, okay, there's a clear, because when I got all my decisions back, got the financial packages, there was a clear answer to me. And I was like, logically, this is what makes sense. It makes sense financially. I'm not going to be at an extreme disadvantage if I go here. And the list kept going on. And then I would talk to my parents. They're like, yeah, that's fine. This was a school that I was actually like considering. It wasn't like a school that, some people just apply to schools. So I had a very clear route for that one. And then on the other hand, it was this middle school that just felt right from the beginning. It just I always had a close tie to it. I always felt like that is where I would end up. Like even in the beginning of junior year, I think I went there for like a debate event that I was doing. And then I don't know, it just felt right. It felt like a perfect match. It felt like it wasn't too much of a risk, but it wasn't like I was underestimating myself either. So it felt, I don't know, I can't really describe it in other way. It just, I had a close tie to the school, and I just no matter how, I was applying to so many different schools. I loved so many other schools, but at the end of the day, I always had a feeling that I was going to end up at this one school. So but logically, it didn't make sense financially, and it wasn't going to give me too much an advantage over the other school. So logically, I had an answer, but emotionally, I had another answer. So I tried to express that to Jenn and my family, because everyone was like, no, go to the school that makes the most sense. And I was like,
and I was going to send you down to another school. I was like, there's a Chick-fil-A down there. Just go down there.
She was sending me on these campus tours, and I was like, no, I know what I need to do. I knew what I had to do, but I was trying to force myself emotionally to shift to the other school. So it was I'm with you. I agree with you logically, but I don't think I'm going to be okay with turning down the other school. I felt like I was going to be underestimating myself. So I had to take that risk and really trust my gut, because I trust that more than anything else, because it's gotten me to where I am so far. So I really had to go with it. And
I think
I got everyone else to understand.
Yeah, in the conversation we had live, I was like, oh, you know what? I just remember the exact moment being like, actually, no, that would be a horrible decision for her. But also talking to you about okay, these are the long-term implications of that choice, right? So you're going to be doing here, which means when you're thinking about grad school, this is where we need you to be positioned. This is what we need you, but also you might not go. And I think you said something that was really poignant to me. You were like, I am building my dream on this idea that I might go to law school, but what if I just don't go to law school then? And then I've turned down this school that I really love for this possibility of law school. And as somebody who quit the law is legit, that's a legitimate experience. Does anybody else want to share something they feel like they've learned this semester or year? Whatever this was, does anybody want to share something?
I think this year, though, if you put it on a scatter plot, it's an outlier, right? And so when I think about how the examples from this year kind of represent all the years that I've been doing this, I mean, I've been at one school for 13 years. Do you hear echo, or is it just me?
No, it's just, I can mute me, though. Go ahead.
I just hear myself. So, no, I've been at the same school for 13 years. And so I've seen students go off, they come back, they talk to me. I've seen them go to grad school. I've seen them get married, have kids, I've have that history with those students. And so what Stephanie was talking about, having these options and following your gut, you're going to go off to school just like they did. And some of them are going to change their mind, and that's okay. Some of them are going to have a bad experience, and that's okay too. Life is full of that. And I've seen that unfold over the past 13 years for many of my students. And I just think that perspective and that mind shift of being able to meet that head on and be okay with those choices that you make, whether you're starting at community college or, traveling across the country for the first time to go to, school in upstate New York, those are choices that are okay to make now. So I think that this year has taught me how to look at things as, it's okay if it doesn't go your way, just like a lot of things didn't go our way this year. And to handle that, try to handle it with a little bit of grace and understanding and forgiveness for yourself, and be proud of yourself and your choices. I had a student who was going to graduate, but then had a setback this year. And so they're going to graduate this summer. And they were a little upset about that because of the hoopla and the tradition of May and all the pomp and circumstance. And I'm like, no, this is your journey. You're on the path you're supposed to be on. And I think that if students and counselors can think about each individual person in that perspective, in that light, then that's how we should move forward. It's not about the most prestigious university or the best choice. It's the choice you have now, and that's something to be proud of and to own, and just understand that it's just I think this year's taught me that, just to look at things and be okay with uncertainty, but also be okay with change too.
Yeah, and I feel like there's points of this year that were outliers, and then points of this year that were just like, I felt like a lot of people got brought into the open, right? So, as somebody who's been teaching this test, news to me that you can make the decision without this, because I had heard, and I had started deconstructing it, and I was like, wait a second. Like, I remember I was arguing with Paul Tuff on Twitter, like, no, we need these tests, we need them. And then I read his book, I was like, oh no, you're right, man. Like, I don't need to be doing the work of the College Board to repair all the inequities in the world. And we don't need to find a way to scale. We could just get rid of it. Thank you, Paul. But also for me, finding out that everything that I started to deconstruct, I'm not wrong. You all weren't necessarily Parent Trap, 2 kids, same whatever. And all of a sudden, it just comes down to the SAT score. And they're like, and just asking frank questions. Like, when I get on admissions officers, does it come down to the SAT score for you? Because if it does, and you can say, yeah, it does, then I know where to position the student, right? And if it doesn't, I'm not going to position many students there, but if it doesn't, then you saying, no, this is how we make decisions and how we have conversations. I think earlier in this cycle we had, I forgot who it was, but somebody was just like, yeah, that was our test optional policy, and we forgot to update the website. It was like something as little as that. Like, when we made this policy in June, we thought the world was going to be X, Y, and Z. So it reflects our thinking in June, but it does not reflect our thinking now. And the policy was very like, if you can test, and they're like, had I just thought about the fact that y'all are also human and that I need to be asking questions, it would have been a lot easier. Anybody else with lessons learned? My lesson is ask more questions and then ask them to multiple people at the same institution, because sometimes when you hear from different people, you get a more fuller perspective. Anybody else who has last lessons from the year, reflections? Marie?
Yeah. This is going to sound so cheesy, but I swear, and this applies to admissions. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned this year is that so many of the things that I have allowed to be things that are restrictions. I learned that boundaries are important, but the things that I would place into a box aren't real. They're social construct, right? So because I live in New Orleans and we have Mardi Gras and things like that, I have a lot of formal wear, like fancy dresses. And I was putting stuff away a couple of months into the pandemic and found this pile of dry cleaning that I forgot about of like Mardi Gras gear. And what am I going to do with that? And I just decided that week was going to be black tie wear week in the house. And so every day I put on something from that ridiculous pile of clothes, because I'm like, I look ridiculous wearing this. I'm like, but do I really?
I bet you look
more or less
amazing.
Ridiculous? Girl, no. But I mean, it was just like these things that I've always put into a box, and this belongs here and this belongs here. Like, that didn't have to be. Mm-hmm. And I think about admissions in the profession and those moments where we saw that. The moments where we said, oh gosh, maybe May 1st isn't sacrosanct. Those moments when we said, maybe we can give some grace to someone. Like, all of those moments where we quit putting things into very narrow spaces and expanded those spaces somewhat. That was really helpful. And, a week of black tie wear is really good. Having dance breaks a lot is okay. Like, these things are okay. and not more than okay. I think they inspire a lot of change and freedom.
I mean, learning that my stylist was always right. You could have taken out your weave. You were just being lazy. Like for me, like that was something I learned during the pandemic, and it seems like really small to somebody else. But I was like, it felt like a lot of power. I was like, now I have the power to do something that I felt disempowered to do. And I hope that admissions also feels empowered to say, and this is what I will say, especially with admissions officers, because I think sometimes we think it's an institution. It's like these admissions officers don't care. And sometimes they do care, but they can't get it through, right? So like I had one person that was just like, I've been waiting for this article so I could get rid of this test. So thank you so much. I'm going to do that. But also you have the power to say, I don't need to be in the space anymore, because if the pandemic hasn't shifted you, nothing will. So it's time for me to find an institution that values what I want to value. Noor, are there lessons that you've learned during this pandemic? Or also, I would love to hear pandemic stories as you all share your lessons, because, you know, it's also amazing as well.
What did I learn? Well, I feel like I'm the opposite of Marie. I've definitely been wearing more sweatpants, like 7, 8 of the same style,
one formal week.
Colors. Okay.
One formal week. Everything else has been not cute.
If we all stood up, we'd all be wearing sweatpants, right?
Oh.
I'm wearing jeans that I rented and a top that I rented.
Hard pants?
Yeah. Well,
waistband?
Yeah, but I rented everything that I'm wearing right now from Rent the Runway, just FYI.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, honestly, it's been hard to set boundaries. Like especially if you're remote and your office is just right there, and it's tempting to I'll just spend a little more time doing this. It's okay. It's right here. I'm home. I'm in pajamas. It's okay. But I just feel like I had to be much more intentional about giving myself grace for things and taking breaks and not feel guilty about taking a break. I've been reading a lot. Just read The Vanishing Half. Highly recommend. That was a great book. I finished it, stayed up until midnight, 2 hours past my bedtime reading it. So I think it's been more about returning to some of the things that I used to really be able to spend time doing that. I've been working a lot, right? And it's taken away from some of those things, but trying to be intentional about taking those breaks. I've been trying to do that more. Yeah.
Alicia, lessons learned from the season? Anything?
Oh, let's see. Lessons learned. I would say to really champion ideas that feel really sacred, and to stand behind them firmly, and to share them with any and everyone who will listen, I think is really important. And that kind of is tied into, the opportunities or whatever of this moment, of this time that we're in. I think it's really important to share those ideas. I'm often surprised by how many other people are like, I thought about that too. Or that's such a great idea. I really think we could pull that off. So that's one thing that I would say. And also that, it's really important to make sure that you share space with other educators and other people who really and genuinely love working with children. Because I think we would also on the other side be surprised by how many educators don't. And so I think making sure that we are in space and we are in conversation and that we're sharing tea and sharing wine and sharing, great, ideas and thoughts and experiences with educators who want to see and do everything within their power to see students thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know some people might have to jump off, and that's fine. Marie, we love having you.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to come down
friends.
with formal wear one day and walk around your house.
I mean, it's a day.
And not in a creepy way, by the way, people.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, New Orleans' favorite color is sequins and glitter, so we encourage it daily. Friends, it's such a pleasure to see you, and I miss you all. You're brilliant women, and thank you.
Yes, thanks for coming.
Thanks. Bye, friends.
Okay, Tara, any last lessons learned? And then Stephanie, of course, I'm going to have you close it.
What Alicia was talking about, sharing space with other educators. I think over this pandemic, I've really had the opportunity to learn and collaborate and just, bounce ideas off of. Tony Sarda, said, hey, let's do a phone call. And so we talked. He helped me when I was working in the school, and then I helped him. It was like this, counselor meets admissions person, and then we just collaborated and bounced ideas off of each other. And I think that colleges should make those offers, extend the olive branch to counselors, develop those relationships and friendships. You guys, we all met at Hack the Gates, right? Like Marie's jumped off. And then, Alicia and I have been on college tours in New Orleans at Tulane right before the pandemic started. Like, there's just various instances where you meet people and you realize that you have a shared experience, but then you go back to your own little bubble. So we've all been in a bubble. So I think my biggest lesson is to really, pick up the phone. A regular phone call, not just a Zoom, is so powerful, and it means so much to hear other people and their perspectives. And it got me out of my comfort zone a little bit, and my brain has grown so much working on the other side of the desk, just thinking about things with that other lens, coming at it with the counselor perspective, and then seeing it actually happen at the college side. It's just been affirming and life-changing. I really think that and it depends on the university. I'm sure I could go to some universities and be like, no, you can't do this,
Right.
It's been a welcome change. And I think that change is important for us as professionals, just like it is for students, and to really kind of embrace that change and that uncertainty a little bit too.
Yeah. For me, my last reflection before I turn it over to Stephanie is question everything, assume nothing, because I had a lot of assumptions about admissions, especially even after test optional. Even just learning little things like, UVA saying we've never really taken the test seriously, and going back to their common data set and be like, oh yeah, so I'm assuming something about you. You're telling me something different. Trusting people, but then also deciding what I'm not going to compromise on. And it might be during the pandemic, I really just embraced my insomnia and was like, okay, it's time to just move the times of appointments back to 11, because I do better at 11. I start better at 11, but also that applies to admissions. Like, what are the things that I'm just not going to compromise on? And what are the things that I'm going to be okay with having discussions about? Right. And in terms of even with our group, what are the things that I need to be doing as a leader to move this group forward? What are the things that I can empower some of the students like Stephanie to do so that they can be a better leader than me in this space, because they know what these other students are going through more, right? So not making a lot of assumptions, deciding what I'm not going to compromise on, which is a long list now that, I'm a little bit older, but also what do I have a little bit of flexibility for? And then the last thing I will say is I stopped assuming that I needed to create a patch for every problem in admissions. And what I mean by that is I don't think we should be investing in improving how people write, essays or letters or whatever. We should be improving the readers and improving educating the consumer, educating the institution on this is how our students are going to show up. And if you would like them, then this is what you need to start acknowledging within your practices. So talking to people about these are the perceived gaps that you have and the biases and things like that. But yeah, and then renting your clothes, because I don't need to buy clothes if I can rent them. I mean, and I don't need to rent. I also don't need to buy everything I rent. And I had to learn that the hard way. Like I was like, this is cute. I'm going to own it now. It's called rent. It's not called buy everything that you rent from the runway. So Stephanie, my truth seeker, who, Alicia, you aren't here. I told Stephanie before I started, I was like, I'm going to try this ambitious look. I'm scared. And she's like, you should be. This makeup look is it's very tricky. I don't know why you're doing it, but you should be. You should be scared. My truth. I think that's the other thing. Finding other people who speak the truth, like Stephanie, has always been really helpful. What are your thoughts? Last words.
One thing that I've recently been struggling with a little bit was actually like being excited about this process. I feel like so much has happened, and like this is supposed to be exciting. We've worked so hard to get to this point. So I found that like I was getting dragged down by, all the essays I had to do, all the letters of recommendation I has to get.
I remember the 2 colleges you were like, I'm not going to those colleges. I have to write another essay. I ain't going out the door. And I was like,
definitely, like it gets that bad. Like I was so overwhelmed and stressed out because at the same time I'm trying to figure out virtual learning. So it's like how like some schools just didn't make it. I just couldn't apply. And, I've thought about applying to those schools since I was 9 and it just didn't happen, but it worked out. So, definitely being more excited about it because it's supposed to be exciting. I'm supposed to be excited about going there. I mean, now they just send me like 100 emails a day asking me to do X, Y, and Z, but that's fine. I'm trying to be more excited about that. And the second thing that I really learned over like the pandemic and with working with Jenn is that I don't have to take on every opportunity because I'm the type of person who took on so many things at one time. Like I remember I was playing like 3 sports at one time and I was like, I'm like, my body hurts. I can't do this. But I just did it because I was like, I have to give myself every single opportunity, every single chance. But now I'm realizing that, I'm not really interested in that, or I don't really have time for that right now, or I don't really want to do it. And now it's like easier for me to say no to opportunities that before I would have took on with no question, not even looking at my schedule. So that's really important to me too. And another thing is actually like, piggybacking off what Jenn said, asking questions and being more comfortable with asking questions, because before I probably wouldn't have contacted all these college admissions offices as much as I would have. So like plus I'm really skeptical of those websites. Like I still kind of don't trust them, but I'm learning to definitely like see these are humans behind those words, and in most cases they do mean it. And if I'm not sure, I can go and ask. Yeah. And if I'm not sure, then I can ask, and that's okay. I'm not going to be penalized for that. And so.
I mean, I think that, it's like ask questions and then ask more and then ask 5 other people the question and then kind of figure out what the truth is, right? Because, and I think Marie said this before she left, because the truth can change. It could be true one day, not true the next, and then true again the next day. So, well, I appreciate having, again, I just want to make sure everybody is aware. It was not hard to find women in admissions. It was not hard to find women of color. It took just a group DM. And I was like, hey guys, what's up? Thinking about doing this. This is time. Let me know if you're free. And not all the time, everybody's going to be free. So you're like, okay, just pulling other people aside and be like, okay, you're not free this day. Here's another day that you could do it. Here's another day. But, I think it's time for us to have more of a voice and a say, and not. The one thing I hope that I am imparting to Stephanie is that you don't have to wait to be called to leadership. You don't have to like develop to be a leader. You can just start with like a StreamYard account and a credit card if you have it. And if you don't, you can phrase it. And if you don't have that, you could use your phone. And if you don't have a phone, then you could just write a paper. I don't know, but you can just start where you're at. And I know that sounds so cliche, but you don't have to wait. So I appreciate everybody coming. Does anybody want to say anything else before we go? No? Oh, wait, no? Okay, no, okay. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to log off. It's going to be it's going to end, and then we'll be here for a second. But bye to our live audience.